Hello everybody and welcome to the EMI MOOC week 4 tutor review. And yes, this is the final video we'll be doing for this run of the MOOC, and there's a sadness to that, but it's been great that we've been tracking so many people on your MOOC journey, which has been really interesting, and we've got some really good points that we're bringing from your comments. I think that we're finishing off with today, and yeah, I'll share some of my ideas, Mary, and then throw them to you, and we can have a bit of a joint reflection.
On the last 4 weeks. Right, off you go then, Rob.
Okay, I put pressure on myself to go first then.
Yes.
So I think the key feature of this week, we're kind of really getting deeper into where we started, which is the appreciation of context, the need for negotiation, and whatever topic we're talking about, I think lots of people are really interested in the kind of nuances, the differences, like the need to understand yourself, what you intend to do, how you want to do things, and what you know, for example, whether it's about culture, about classroom management, about communication, but recognize, both who's in that room with you and also what your learning objectives are, or what your teaching objectives are. And I think that's really come through this week, which is, a big positive. And the fact that people are making judgments but focusing on the context. I think lots of these comments are really doing what we do as educators. I know Mary and I have worked together for a long time, but we never make a judgment or say this is the best way to do something without thinking about the context. And I don't know if you have something you can add to that, Mary.
Yes, a phrase that I often hear used by colleagues is, this is best practice. And whenever somebody says that, I want to turn around and say, how do you know it's best practice? All we can say is we can share good practice in certain circumstances, and that is really the best that we can aim for, really, because I think most of the time we're just aiming to have our learners learn as well as they can. We're just trying to do as good a job as we can do, because teachers lead such pressurized lives. So to say that this is the best way in any context, I would disagree with. It can only be a good way for me.
Yeah, and I've got an example of that actually from yesterday. I had a conversation with somebody yesterday, and I thought we were talking about our reflections from the pandemic. And I was talking about the pressure, because I spoke to my students a lot about how they felt about being in the Teams group, and we did group reflections about, what made them anxious, what made them nervous, what was there about, we use Microsoft Teams here, and just what is there in the structure of Teams that either encourages them to communicate and learn, or they find quite oppressive and difficult. And I found that people, or lots of people, reported to me that turning on that microphone and camera when they've had it off, particularly when they haven't spoken for a long time, is much more difficult than speaking normally. There's something that stops them, even if I'm asking them a question directly. There's an anxiety about pressing that button. And then somebody else was saying, well, I've been speaking to my students and they said they love speaking on Teams because they're at home, it's a relaxed environment, they can just communicate. But in a lecture theatre or a seminar room, they feel all eyes coming on them when they start talking, and they get anxious. And I think that shows the need for context, that you have to understand what your learners are feeling. And often there's a group perception. There's like a culture that takes over a group, where if everyone's cameras off and microphones off, the pressure of putting your camera and microphone on is much greater. If everyone's doing it and seems relaxed and smiley, there's less pressure. And likewise in a room, if people look a bit judgmental, it's much harder. So yeah, I was having that conversation yesterday, and I find that really interesting that,
Yes.
you know, I can take something away and think, oh, I understand everything much more clearly, but then I could teach another class and my understanding is completely wrong. So
Yes, because of the reaction.
exactly.
I
My
have
best practice is
my best
not
practice.
best practice anymore.
Yes. And I really don't like it when they say that a teacher has, or I fear that we're wandering now off the point, but a teacher is said to have 20 years experience, whereas in fact it's just 1 year that they've experienced 20 times. And I don't like to actually use too many notes that I've made from sessions I've given in the past. I like to recreate things each time for the audience that I'm working with, because it never, if I take something from the past and just say, right, I'll do that session with this group, that's when I run into difficulties. That's when it never fits and it goes wrong. And I come out and I think, well, that went really well 2 years ago with that group. Why hasn't it gone well now with this group? And it's because I haven't started sort of at the beginning again. And with experience, then you know how to change things and refresh. And I think that's what I'm trying to say for anybody who's listening to this burble at the moment, that attention to the context, the audience, the learners, is what will give our teaching the freshness that we need to deal with the difficulties that come up, because there are a lot of difficulties that come up in teaching, and even more so, I think, with the challenges that EME presents. What do you think, Rob?
No, absolutely. I was just going to add that it always happens to me with the lessons that worked the best. You know, I've got an activity that was amazing and everybody's, I got it this time. The next year, I'm so conscious of the fact that it's likely to go wrong.
Yes.
Because like you say, you just forget the setup. You have so much confidence in the activity.
Yes.
Excuse motorbikes in the background. Yes, so much confidence in the activity that the activity will work that you forget the setup, you forget the context, you forget, you know, to bring people with you, and then it just falls down. And I've experienced that so many times.
It happens so very often.
And and one other point I was going to mention was culture and communication has been a big theme going through.
It has.
It's great that people have brought it to questions which weren't actually about culture, but they, you know, consider the cultural dimensions. And one very interesting thing, an observation from the program, is two differences here where we've got intercultural communication in the room, intercultural communication between you and your students and other students. So that's really managing communication and helping them understand each other for the purposes of learning and for the purposes of a group culture.
Yeah.
And then you also have something else, which is intercultural awareness and intercultural skills development as a learning objective. So students who want to, or you want your students to have a career which could be international, or to be able to talk to other researchers from around the world, to be able to go into business situations around the world, whatever program you're teaching. And I think those two are distinct considerations that have different realizations in the classroom.
They do.
So, and I think sometimes you can be practical and have a really good intercultural, you can communicate interculturally in an effective way to teach, but you're not necessarily doing everything you can to develop the students' intercultural awareness for beyond the classroom. And I think that was really interesting, to notice the difference.
Yeah, that was good. Okay. I think our time is whizzing by, and we do need to spend a little bit of time just bringing the the 4 weeks to a close, and just talking about what you're going to do next, now that the course is finished. And one thing, I remember saying this to a group some while back, that we do courses, we do MOOCs, whether they're in a face-to-face classroom setting or online. And you think, right, you know, I've done that, and often we forget about it. It's like we've ticked that, and sometimes we don't truly reflect on what we've gained and what we can take out from such a course and use again in the future. And I did say right at the beginning that I would like everybody to think where they are or where they were 4 weeks ago with regard to you know, their ideas about teaching and you know, their feelings about around EMI and so on. And then think about them now and try and measure that change that has, we hope, happened for you, even if it's only in a few small ways. You know, that change, can you measure that change? And then can you apply something from that change to your teaching situation? Because I'm as bad as everybody else. I might sign up for a MOOC or a course or say just a lecture, even something quite short, and then life forces me to move quickly onto something else, and I don't know whether I truly reap the benefits of that lecture, for example, unless I make a conscious effort to think, well, go back and look at those references that the presenter made, things like that. So what I'm really asking people to do is try and make this MOOC the one that you really remember, that you act upon, so that all the effort you've put in over the past couple of weeks counts for something in your teaching to come. Am I making any sense, Rob?
You are, yes.
Oh,
yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. You know, for people individually, I don't know what this could mean. It could be that you've now become interested in ELF, and you would like to do some research in that area. There's lots of research to be done in EME itself, and do please get in touch with us if you're thinking of doing some research, because we'd love to, you know, reap the benefits ourselves of research that you do. Could you, for example, in a CPD, a continuing professional development session in your institution, could you bring up some of the issues that we've raised on this MOOC and perhaps share those with other people in your institution? So we always say, you know, you are the experts in your context. You are also the experts in this MOOC. So do please spread some of that expertise. Don't keep it all to yourself. Spread the word. You know, there'll be another run of the MOOC. I'm not quite sure when it will be, actually, probably in the new year. But anyway, tell people about it, act on it in your own interests and in the interests of the people that you work with, your colleagues, and of course your learners, because, you know, the work that you put into yourself as a teacher spills over and has its benefit truly in the learning that your students and hopefully will profit from and will get from this. Okay. What else do we need to say, given that it's our last tutor review? The Facebook group.
Oh, Facebook group, yes.
Facebook group. Yeah, we have a Facebook group. English is a medium of instruction for academics, like the MOOC itself. You can find, I know Facebook isn't everybody's cup of tea. That's an idiom, but I had to put it in. I had to use it. Not everybody likes Facebook, let's put it that way. And you will be very welcome. We get, I think one of the most useful things is that we find out about, say, a talk that somebody might be giving. And of course, these are all now online, they're all virtual, so you can listen to somebody. I sometimes listen to some talks that come from a university, I've forgotten the name, in Pakistan somewhere, you know, which I normally wouldn't be able to, you know, have the privilege to listen to, but because they're online, then you know, this is all the good things that have come out recently of what we've been through. So you you know, sometimes there are notices about publications or talks or seminars, what people are doing, and yeah, it's a good way of keeping in touch with you all. So do please join us.
Yeah.
What else do we have to say to people, Rob?
I was just going to echo your point and say, I think that the two things for me that you want to take away is keeping the key ideas in your consciousness, because I think as teachers, the most important learning environment is when you're teaching, you know, when you're learning with students and with colleagues. And the second point you made there is that old cliche, teaching is the best way to learn. And I think that's another important thing. If you can share some ideas with colleagues, find a way of disseminating something you think is important about this, then that's a way that you can keep it in your consciousness, you know, express it for yourself, make it part of your professional identity.
Yes.
Into that, and that's really how people grow.
It is.
So I'd really encourage people to take that on and do it, because it's not the kind of area where you watch a video and just learn something new. This is very much developmental. This is something you have to take with you, and you know, yeah, I very much encourage people to do that.
So we hope that some of the ideas that you know, have been contained in the past 4 weeks, that they will be meaningful for you and actually be a springboard into more fulfillment in your teaching and more enjoyment of your teaching. And we really would genuinely like to hear from anybody in the future who would like to get in touch with us.
Yeah.
Shall we say goodbye?
Let's say farewell until we meet again.
Yeah, I don't like saying goodbye really. So until we meet again, all the very, very best from us.
Absolutely. Take care, everybody.
Okay. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.